Um, what am I going to talk about? I've been doing work for the last 2.5 years with chronic diseases, and I'm just going to share insights that I've seen. I keep learning every day. So what you'll hear today is what I've learned so far. Next year, maybe you'll hear something else. Um, can we move on, please? So I have been really excited about human beings, us, right? Humankind. And I've always been very curious about what makes us us, and I've been researching about DNA, and I've really come to the conclusion that we are indeed the epitome of evolution. Okay? Next. Sometimes we don't really act like we are the epitome of evolution. Next slide. There is more contrary evidence, and then there is more. And then, of course, apart from these wonderful individual examples, we have the example of what we're doing to our planet. So it doesn't seem very apparent that we are the epitome of evolution. But next slide, please. We are, okay? But before I go into that, I wanted to ask if any of you experienced what I call as the FLC syndrome. Anyone here who's gone through the FLC syndrome? No? The AMHS syndrome? Oh yeah, sorry. So what FLC stands for is I feel like crap. All right? Or the AMHS stands for Aaj mood nahi hai. So has anyone ever gone through that? Like, show of hands, please. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, right? So what are the symptoms? Can you tell me what really happens when you feel like this? No energy, you feel like you're lethargic, or you just don't feel like doing anything, you feel like you feel bloated, or you feel just meh, right? And people don't realize that actually all of these things are symptoms of something not really being right in your body. We just pass it off, saying, it's just one of those days, but just because we have made something very common, it's not really the normal. So before I actually begin with what I want to talk about, I just wanted to know if someone wants to have fun here. Yes? 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 Okay? So just take your phones out. I give you permission to check your phones during my talk, like blanket permission. Take your phones out. I know it's a little hard to enter that link. I wish I had like some tech to kind of beam it directly into your phones. But just enter surveymonkey.com and then backslash with an R and a backslash with the TTM123. And you have 3 seconds to do this. No, you have a minute to do this. That should open up a survey link on your phone. If that's happening, please raise your hands. It's there on the, you can't see it? Sorry. I think I'm a little colorblind. But it's surveymonkey.com backslash R backslash TTM123 / thank you, Nandini. I am spatially challenged. I had done a cognitive test when I was in 9th grade, and I have a challenge with spaces and shapes. So my / is your / Did you get it? Is the link up? Is my tech working? Okay, yay. Anyone not getting the link on their phone? Show of hands, please. Not getting it? Yeah, it should say the Thrive method assessment. Is that happening? Yes? Majority yes? Okay, great. It's a quick assessment. It's 10 questions. It should take you no more than 2-3 minutes. At the end of the presentation, we'll actually demonstrate the results of this assessment. So I'll give you about 3 minutes to finish this. If anyone's having a struggle with it, please raise your hands. Done? Everyone's done? Okay, perfect. Can we move on? All right, so going back to why I say we are the epitome of evolution, I really believe this planet, this beautiful earth that we live on, has not done anything without purpose. And look at nature, how it is designed. There is not a single thing that's been created without purpose, even mosquitoes. And then if we exist, it can't be an accident, right? She has put in so much time and energy, and when I say time, it's on the scale of billions of years. She has put in so much time and energy and careful, loving thought into creating us, the amount of resources that have gone into creating the human is insane. And to believe that we are here as parasites or we are here as a disservice to the planet would be really, really disrespectful of this planet's intelligence itself. So I have been looking at DNA, I've been looking at different species, I've been looking at viruses, I've been looking at bacteria, I've been looking at how evolution has been happening itself. And I really believe we are, like when Shelley spoke of primates and then us having the same mother, there is a reason why we are here today and we continue to evolve. So with everything that's happening to the environment, we continuously evolve. Next slide. So we think of ourselves as average human beings, right? But then there are demonstrated examples in our time today where there are real life superhumans. That guy underwater, Stig Severinsen, he can be underwater without breathing. I mean, standing here, I'm breathing 75 breaths a minute, I think, because the stage makes me nervous, but he can be there for hours without breathing. Wim Hof, the Iceman, anyone's heard of Wim Hof? Yeah, so he can withstand absolute cold temperatures in just one chaddi, right? If that's not a demonstrated ability of being a superhuman, what is? That girl, Natasha, she has X-ray vision. So she can see you like an X-ray does. She can see through your skin and bones and look at your organs and tell you what's going on inside without doing anything else, just using her two superhuman eyes. Who knows the lady on top? Shakuntala Devi. Her ability to crunch numbers to me, like sometimes I struggle with my bank accounts, she is my superhuman goddess. So there are demonstrated real life examples of people from our own species where they have taken the same genetic material that all of us in this room have and have gone further than most of us can imagine, right? And then there is this. When we think of ourselves as limited, there is this saying that no human is limited. Yeah? So then what limits us? What keeps us from reaching our full potential? What keeps me from being Wim Hof? What keeps me from being Natasha? They do not have an extra set of chromosomes. It is the same DNA. In fact, the difference between a primate's DNA and our DNA is just 1%, I think, because most statistics are made up on the spot. But, yeah. But I don't think there's too much of a genetic difference between Natasha or a Wim Hof or a Stig and Mugdha standing here and anyone from the audience, right? But we still are limited. Most of us struggle with waking up and going to work without a cup of coffee. So what's creating that? What's causing that? And that is what I really love working with. That's my superpower. Investigating what's keeping you from reaching your full potential. Next slide, please. So typically, this is the human life cycle that most of us have agreed upon. We say that this is how it happens. We are born, we have good health for a few years of our life. Now with the entire ADHD, autism epidemic, even the first few years of human life are being affected. But otherwise, most of us are born, we have a relatively good life. Then around 30, 35, small things start happening. You are gaining weight every year. You start feeling a little more tired. You need some more tea and coffee through the day. Maybe you start smoking, and then, by 45, 50, your doctor's becoming a very good friend. You're meeting him very often. By the time you're 60, 65, you're really spending on your luxurious hospital stays. By the time you're 70, 75 maybe, if you've been really kind to the people, your friends and family are visiting you in your cemetery, right? That's the most common life cycle that we've normalized. But it's not. That's not how human beings are meant to exist. There are examples of humans who have gone beyond 100 very easily. The entire Blue Zone, the studies are there. There are stories of humans who've lived for many more years than that. I don't know if any of you have heard of Mahavatar Babaji, and the myths are there that they live for 3,000 years. And if there's a story around it, I'm sure there is some truth to it too. So my quest is always about this. At what point can we prevent that and keep it like this till the end of your life? But when I keep looking for that, I keep finding data that tells me everyone is sick and that the chronic disease epidemic is just growing. So look at the graph from 1995 to 2020 and then 2030 is going to become worse. Like if you want to look up for data, you can look at the World Economic Forum that's talking of how chronic diseases are going to be costing the GDP almost $3 trillion. Okay, so that's there are n number of research studies that show how much chronic diseases are going to affect the economy itself, because when people are sick, they can't be productive, and they can't be productive, it's going to affect the entire economy. So like I said, my curiosity is always about finding out the root cause, about what's making anyone sick. And so far, this is what we've discovered. So we work with blood tests. I'll tell you how that happens. But what we found as the root causes of that's making anyone sick is you could be deficient in nutrients. I think Dr. Shailesh Rao had this brilliant hypothesis that Mahatma Gandhi couldn't go vegan because he had a B12 deficiency. I think you're right on point there. I really think so. But you could be deficient in nutrients, you could be eating the wrong kind of food, you could be exposed to environmental toxins. I'll go into each of these a little more in detail. You could have dysfunctional organ systems. In fact, the survey that you filled will kind of show us if any of these things are happening. You could be having a mixed microbiome. You could be possibly having the bad guys. Too many of the bad guys and not enough of the good guys. I spoke about this yesterday in the panel discussion. Or you could be eating the wrong kind of food. I think we've discussed food quite a bit already about what is really the wrong kind of food for a human. Or it could be stress, right? So we'll talk of stress when we go to stress. But these are the 6 ones that I've found so far. I am discovering a 7th one, but I haven't seen enough data around it, so I don't want to put it up here. These are the 6 reasons why we see people who are sick are getting sicker, people who are healthy are now getting sick. Next slide, please. All right. So when I say deficiencies, most of us who've actually gone plant-based or vegan have always been asked about 2 questions. Where are you getting your protein from, and where are you getting your B12 from? So these are the 2 words that everyone knows, but there are deficiencies that I see even in people who eat meat and who come to me with their blood work. Vitamin D is something that everyone is deficient in given the kind of lifestyles that we live. People are deficient in zinc, people are deficient in magnesium because our soil quality has depleted so much because of our own ignorance, and our plants just don't have the nutrients that we need in the right quantity. So even if you're eating fully plant-based, you could still be deficient in a few nutrients. So these deficiencies sometimes actually create sickness. How many of you crave chocolate? There have to be more people who crave chocolate. Like, come on, be honest, it's okay, I'm not judging you here. So did you know if you're deficient in magnesium, you will crave chocolate because cacao, the nut that chocolate is made from, the nut or the fruit? The bean, sorry, thank you. That is very high in magnesium, so your brain always knows, right, what you need. And if you're deficient in magnesium, you could always end up with chocolate cravings. If you have these aches and pains and cramps that happen in the night, especially in your calves, that could also be a magnesium deficiency. So often you could be deficient in nutrients and you could be getting sick simply because your body doesn't have the raw material it needs to make everything that the body needs to function appropriately. Any of you here who gets frequent colds every time the weather changes? Yeah, so that could simply be a zinc deficiency because zinc is what the body uses to keep your immune system going. Okay, so deficiencies are one way in which you could get sick without anything else necessarily being wrong in your body. Tell me what's the wrong kind of food for you to eat. The best answer gets a t-shirt from me. Okay, pizza, good. Junk food. Come on, we spoke about it for like 1.5 days. What? Animal foods, right? Processed food, dairy, milk, yeah. Animal products, excellent. You get like, I don't have any t-shirts, actually I just fibbed, but if I had some, you would have gotten the t-shirt, okay. But yeah, so refined products, right? Like sugar, your maidas, all of those. In fact, maida, I would just, anything that's got to do with wheat, I would keep it out of your diet. But processed foods, animal products I'm not going to go into too much because we've had so many amazing speakers talk about it, and if that's not become part of your consciousness and your subconsciousness yet, then like what were you doing for the last 1.5 days, right? But animal foods do not belong in the human diet anymore, neither does sugar, neither do those things, those squiggly lines that's made of mustard. So is mustard vegan or not? Tomato ketchup, is it vegan or not? It is. Would you eat it? No, right? So anything that comes out of a packet is not meant for you, right? So the simplest distinction that you make, whether to eat something or not, is if it comes from a plant, eat it. If it's made in a plant, don't eat it. Simple, right? How hard is that? That's the thing, right? So when it comes to food, I actually don't get too much into the, like when I have to talk to people, right? I don't get into the entire debate about veganism and plant versus animal, because sometimes it's like a lot of energy just goes into convincing them about that. I just look at food from two categories. Is it going to heal you? Is it going to harm you? So if it heals you, eat it. If it harms you, don't eat it. If you're confused whether it heals you or harms you, ask me, I'll tell you, right? So just look at food from that perspective, and the easiest filter to apply there is how close is it to nature. So between sugarcane juice and sugar, would you say sugarcane juice is bad? Not at all, right? It's minimally processed. It's just cane that's gone into that crushing system, which looks extremely scary. And it's come to you as juice, and it's okay to have it once in a while. But the same sugarcane, when it becomes sugar, is really poisonous to the body, right? So eating the wrong kind of food, and when I say how does this create disease, sugar has been known to cause cancer. Gluten can create inflammation. Animal foods can create everything from diabetes to even heart attacks, because animal foods can increase something called as homocysteine in your blood, which can clot your blood. You know the stories of somebody who was really fit, extremely lean, did not smoke, did not drink, went to the gym every day, and one day on the treadmill only got a heart attack? Have you heard of stories like that? Have you had somebody within your extended network where you heard of something like that happen? That usually happens because their homocysteine levels were very elevated because of the things that they ate for a very long time, and homocysteine can clot the blood, make it thicker, and cause these clots in your body. And guess the one thing that reverses homocysteine levels and brings it to normal? Not folic acid as much as this other magical thing. I can make a promise of a t-shirt and not give one. Like, you should by now know that if I'm saying t-shirts, I still don't have them, right? But okay, yes, a t-shirt for you if you try the answer. Not really. So there is this amino acid called trimethylglycine that actually binds to homocysteine and brings it down. And that is found in beetroots. So you have a plant that's actually reversing something that's a killer that's coming from animal foods, right? The beauty of the plant world just amazes me. It's magical in reversing diseases. But yeah, so eating the wrong kind of food can actually create a lot of disease in your body. So you could be supplementing with the best of the nutrients. You could be taking care of everything. But if you're eating organic ketchup and mustard on your organic pizza, you're still going to die of some chronic disease. So what happens with food is, most of us don't use food for what it is. We use food as a boredom fixer there. We use food as an entertainment system. Chalo bore hai, kuch manga lete hai, right? We use food as a social networking system, right? You want to hang out with your friends, you go out and eat somewhere. We use food as, you're depressed and then you go crave, and this is something that even advertisements do, right? They'll show you that eating something will make you feel better. These chocolate ads do that. A lot of these sweet ads, jalebi, there was this ad for an oil where the kid was sad and the mother made hot jalebis at home and the kid suddenly became better, right? Like his mood improved. So there's a lot of insidious marketing and advertising that shows you that if you're feeling miserable, use food to kind of fix your mood instead of looking at why you're really feeling low. We don't remember what food is really for, and we end up using food for all the wrong reasons, like I said. Fixing your emotions, connecting with people. The connecting with people over food, I like doing that as long as it's the right kind of food. But we use food for many things apart from what food is. But food can actually change our genes, right? So my question to you is, does anyone know what food really is? And maybe I can promise t-shirts again. Food is medicine. How is food medicine? What does food really do in the body? Food is what you are, okay? It gives you energy, yes. But your body is making the energy, na? Like food in front of you is not going to give you energy just by looking at it. It's fuel for the energy. How though? What is food doing to your body? It gives you nutrition, but what is it? It keeps you alive, yes, but so you're partially right there. Boy, you would have really gotten all the t-shirts today. What food really is, next slide. Yeah. It's information. Okay? You have to understand that your genes in your body are like software that run on a program. And your food gets broken down. So when you eat a banana, like that amazing dessert that was there right now, when you eat it, it gets digested, gets broken down into carbs and then glucose, and glucose is the particle that's used for energy making. And then you'll have other things coming in from that banana, right? You'll have potassium, you'll have so many other minerals coming in. So every single atom of food is information that's going into your genes. And your genes use that information and decide whether to program themselves for health or whether to program themselves for disease. Every bite you put in your mouth is telling your genes what to do. Like, you know, any of you from IT here? You write code, right? You write code, and then you run your commands on code. And then if there's a bug in that code, what happens to your software? Yeah, I get an error when I'm trying to do banking, right? Like I have something with banking. But that's what happens when your code is buggy. So when you eat the wrong kind of food, you're giving the wrong kind of code to your genes. And your genes are just going to use that data and going to run a program that they can best with that code. And that program becomes disease if you're eating the wrong kind of things, if you're doing the wrong kind of things with your body. So food is information that triggers genes. Does anyone know how many people in the audience, what is the ratio of the people in this audience that is primed for diabetes? Because most of us are Indians here. 1 in 2. We are genetically programmed for diabetes because of the epigenetic changes that have happened with our ancestors. And with that genetic programming, if you're eating the wrong kind of food, is it a surprise that India is the diabetes capital of the world? It is not. Like there's no mystery there. It's like, how is India the diabetes capital? We are Indians, we have Ayurveda. Like I have no objection with Ayurveda, right? But that's the approach that I get. Like how can I have diabetes? I have eaten healthy all my life. But you're eating the wrong kind of food and you're giving the wrong kind of information to your genes. And then your genes are going to just do what they can do best. But the beauty of the system is the same genes can start reversing. Okay, so when you write a wrong program and you get a wrong software, if you go and edit the code, the software changes, right? That's what we do with food. No matter what genetic disease you are primed for, if you start working with food early enough, your genes will start using that information and data and start reversing those changes. Okay? Anti-aging is a real thing. Like I have no problem with aging because that brings in a lot of wisdom, but your physical body can reverse what has happened over the years. Okay, I will show you some pictures of people from the tribe. You will not believe it, in 3-4 months, they actually look like they're 10-year younger versions. Okay, because that is what the human body is capable of. So I am really in love with the human body. I'm impressed with what our DNA can do. Next slide, please. Okay, third cause is environmental toxins. We've spoken about this in detail, about the sources of toxins in our environment, where they can come from. But how they impact our health is, and this is where the entire sustainability and integration with Mother Earth comes in, right? We become what we eat. What we eat gets processed and becomes part of our body. So if you're eating food that's very high in toxins, if you're eating like organic should be conventional, right? If you're eating food grown in the wrong way with fertilizers and pesticides, all of those things are going into your body. If you're eating food that's been stored in plastic containers, if you're microwaving your food and eating it, all those BPA things are leaching into your food and coming in. If you're breathing air like Delhi air, which is so unfortunate, that is going to enter your body. what these things do is they go into your systems that are responsible for detoxification and filtration, and they start accumulating there. So your liver gets overburdened. Now your liver's primary job, the liver has many jobs. The liver is an amazing organ, but one of it is to resynthesize proteins, to be part of the fat metabolism, to kind of clear up toxins, to take care of our immune system. That's when it's functioning normally. But if you bring in a lot of environmental toxins, then your liver's overloaded with those. And it can't do its primary job, right? And then your health starts taking a beating. So these toxins can accumulate in your thyroid, these can accumulate in your brain, like often all the fluoride that's coming in from your water, your toothpaste, and the soaps you're using, etc., can start accumulating in your pituitary and your pineal gland. Try meditating with a calcified pineal gland. It's no fun. They can go and sit in your kidneys, they can go into your lymphatic system, they can prevent clearing up of actual stuff that needs to be cleared up. Because every day your body is fighting a battle for you. Every day you're exposed. Like somebody sneezes next to you, you are in a swarm of bacteria and viruses that your body will now fight with. So if your body is dealing with these toxins coming in, then it can't do its primary job of your, ensuring that you survive and you thrive. So I have seen many cases where environmental toxins itself have caused a disease in a person. Next slide, please. Overload of pathogens, again, this is something that I don't want to get talking about because if I start, I won't stop for the next 2 hours. But anyone's heard of the human microbiome? Yeah. And do you know that we are 90% viral bacterial DNA and just 10% human DNA? So we are more of microbes and less of humans, right? Given that these guys exist in such abundance, the smallest imbalance in that ecosystem can start creating an impact on your health. So I always tell people, think of your body like, a nice house, and you decided to have a house party, and then you have guests who are coming. And then if you have really noisy, loud guests who are breaking things, damaging things, your neighbors are going to come in and complain, right? Versus guests who are there, who are creative, who are creating good things, they're creating art and music. So that's how your microbiome should be. You should have the guys who are there, who are creating health for you, who are sustaining you, who are building your body, creating a better immune system, helping your DNA become better. Instead of having the guys who bring you down, bring diseases. So yesterday I spoke of the Epstein-Barr virus. It's there in almost 90% of us as human beings. I've also investigated why did it get created in the first place. So that's not the topic of today's conversation. But if you don't have the right balance of the good guys, and if you have too many pathogens, which is the bad guys, you could start getting health problems. So organ dysfunctions, like if your liver is not functioning correctly, if your kidney is not functioning, then that can start causing health problems in your body overall. And then stress. So how many of you think stress is inevitable? That's it? Stress is inevitable, yeah. There is a reason why there is stress, right? Survival of the fittest. There's this entire theory that only when we are tested, we can actually learn and progress to the next level. And evolution is always about progress. Evolution is always about becoming better versions. So everything that creates stress is something that's helping you learn and grow and evolve. So stress is important, otherwise you would stagnate. But how we perceive and respond to stress is something that's messed up in our system currently. And I think that's because of the lack of a community and the lack of the entire connectedness. But what I've seen is, even after we fix the first five root causes, which are easier to fix because they are in a very physical dimension, right? If we don't take care of stress, which is the last one, you can't really achieve any results in terms of health. So these are the 6 root causes that I have discovered so far in my work. Now, how do you know what's going on in your body? How do you know whether your reason for FLC syndrome was deficiencies, or whether it was pathogens, or whether it was stress, or whether it was an organ dysfunction? How do I know that, right? So that's what I love doing, and I do this with this. So I don't normally carry vials of blood with me. Like, I don't have vampirical tendencies, but the work I do begins with blood tests. And that's where the entire, it's like, reading your body's horoscope. We can look for anything that's there and tell you which of these root causes are causing the dysfunction in your body. Once you find that out, it's really easy to fix. So, how do you heal once you know what are the root causes that are there in your body, right? How do you know? How do you start reversing these dysfunctions? How do you start optimizing your DNA? How do you start evolving? You first learn what's going on in your body with your blood test, with your analysis. You find out what's really going on in your body. Then you take the best medicine in the world for it. So, what's in the medicine box? Fruits and vegetables. It's really, really the best way to heal because our body is made of food. Our body is made of the air we breathe. Our body is made of the water we drink. And our body is made of the food we eat. And food is the number one way, eating right is the number one way in which you can heal your body. But what happens is not all bodies are the same. Even your identical twin will not express the same manifestation of a disease because though you have the same genes, you might live in different environments and your exposure to different things might be different, right? So this food thing is the tricky part, right? So knowing who has to eat what and in what composition and what is really needed. So let's say your thyroid is dysfunctional. So you need a certain set of foods. You might need something that's rich in selenium and iodine versus a liver that's dysfunctional. You'll need more foods that help your liver detox. So knowing what foods to eat based on what's really happening with your body is the learning that you have to do. And the last thing, which is extremely downplayed in the way the entire conventional medical system operates, is the power of a tribe. So in my work, what we do is we don't let anyone heal alone. Okay, we don't treat the patient who comes to us as just one person. We immediately make him part of a tribe, him or her. And there have been numerous studies that show that this collective model of healing is what really works for the humankind. I love that word, humankind, because kindness becomes associated with human, right? But this collective system is what really works because we are as a community primed for, we are as a species primed for community, right? So when you say vegan, immediately you have a vegan community around you. When you say plant-based, you have a plant-based community around you. When you say keto, you have a keto community around you. When you say paleo, so we are primed for working in communities. We are primed for identifying people who belong in the same tribe. So even when it comes to healing, we have seen that people heal faster when there's a community around them. Like, how many of you have tried to go vegan here on your own? And the struggle is real, right, for some of you. When your family is not supporting your decision, there was this, like, you want to be vegan, but your mom's not supporting your decision, right? It's very hard to make sustainable changes for your health in isolation. It really is hard because you want to do something good for yourself. Everyone around you is telling you it's probably not the best thing to do, so you give up, right? But when you have a community around you that's practicing the same thing that you want to practice, that's failed many times, much more than you, and has told you that it's okay to fail and this is how you get back on track. When there's a community that's celebrating all your successes, right? Like whatever it is, whether it's your non-scale victories or whether it's your reversal of disease or whether it's even you getting selected as a winner in a photography exhibition. When there's a community celebrating your existence with whatever you're trying to do, you just succeed at what you want to do. So I have seen that bringing in this community model has helped people so much more than just trying to heal them on their own. So, like I said, I wanted to share some before-after pictures because they are the best evidence. This girl on the left in the wheelchair, she had something called as ulcerative colitis. She was she was not wheelchair-bound for 13 years, but she ended up on a wheelchair soon enough. So she was on immunosuppressants, she was on steroids for nearly 13 years because no one could really get to the root cause of her ulcerative colitis. And in about 3 months, that's her, standing upright. And she recently went on a trek to Kalsubai Peak also. This girl on the right, she had something called as fibromyalgia. So she would, from the time she woke up, sometimes even on her sleep, be in chronic pain. She would be in pain all the time. And she was an so one of the doctors even told her to take an antidepressant because she was in pain so much, right? But she was on painkillers all the time. She would get imported painkillers because the Indian ones weren't working for her. We just found the root cause. For her, it was like she was deficient in many things, and then she had an overload of pathogens in her body, the Epstein-Barr virus, and that's her. It took a little longer for her to heal, but that's her 6 months from the first picture. So this girl here had something called as IBS, and the funny part, and this is what happens with a lot of women who come to us for healing, sometimes they just have a cluster of symptoms. Sometimes there's a label that's given, IBS is a label. Sometimes there's no label that a doctor can give because the clusters are all very, very different, right? So they just tell them, you're depressed, you're making this up for attention, and take this antidepressant. So this girl, she was an antidepressant, and she would take that antidepressant and she would pass out for nearly 24 hours. And her husband found my number from somewhere, and he said, I can't, she passes out after the antidepressant for 24 hours and she's not eating anything. We work with her, so that's her. I mean, she is amazing. Like, she's trekking again, she's going on walks, she's like, and the beauty of it is all of these people, right, they came with some serious chronic diseases, and they just made dietary changes and like maybe some supplements for their deficiencies, and they healed from where they are. So their families needed no more testimony. So each person that healed here has healed their families as well, without any support from us. They just did it by cooking the right food and giving them the right food to eat. This guy Sachin here, despite his happy smiley face in this photo, he had a lot of digestive symptoms, and that was impacting his work. He's really senior in the IT industry, and he couldn't work because of his digestion being so messed up. And in about 3 months, not only did he lose weight, but like his smile is like bigger than the first smile. Like, he just can't stop smiling. But these are amazing stories. I mean, I have many more, but my slides would just go on then. Next. What else happened with all of them, even if they didn't come for that as the primary condition, their pre-diabetes went away, the diabetes disappeared if any of them had it. Insulin levels, like, the insulin resistance, the amount of insulin your body needs to convert glucose into energy, that itself dropped by nearly 40%. I am obsessed with data. So while the before-after pictures are good, I make everyone who comes to me do their blood test before and after so that we can actually look at real evidence of what's happening in their body. People lose weight, cholesterol levels go down by 40%. I mean, no statin in the world can do that. Their inflammation, right? Like, the internal inflammation that's there in the body, that goes down. Their need for medicines completely disappears, right? So people who are taking BP medicines, the only medicines that I haven't been able to successfully wean people off is if they're insulin dependent. Because that's not something that we can do once your bodies become severely dependent on insulin. Only the need for it comes down. So somebody who's on 36 units of insulin is now on 20 units of insulin, but we can't stop their insulin need. Otherwise, most medicines we've been able to cut off. Next slide. So why doesn't conventional medicine work this way? Right? Because this is it. You are a profit center for them. The minute you are cured of any of your disease, they cannot make any more profit from you. And I mean no disrespect to doctors. I think doctors become doctors because they really want to heal people. That's the true calling that comes from within. But they are schooled and taught in a system that's designed for this. That's designed for profit. They're not taught any other way of healing people. The amount of time they spend studying nutrition is abysmal compared to the amount of time they spend learning about which medicines to prescribe and which surgeries to conduct, right? So they don't really even believe it's possible to reverse. Like, I had one person who went to his doctor saying, I spoke to this woman and she said, all of this can be reversed. And the doctor is like, "Kyun reversal ke piche pade ho?" Right? Like, give up this dream that you have that things can be reversed. So that's why conventional medicine doesn't work this way, but I think a lot of people here already are aware of that. Next slide, please. So what can you do? Can we switch on the lights behind, please? I can see people nodding off. It's nice and dark and cozy, and I really would want people to take notes. Okay, take notes because this is important. One is check for deficiencies and get them fixed. because when you go plant-based, if you do fall sick, everyone is going to say that तुमने दूध बंद किया इसलिए तुम बीमार हो गए, right? We don't want that happening. We really want you to be successful with your plant-based programs. So check for deficiencies, make sure those are covered so your immune system and your body gets everything it needs. Eliminate the foods that we spoke of. So eliminate gluten, eliminate sugar, processed foods, eliminate all animal products, and bring in the abundance of plants. There are so many plants that you can eat. There's so much that you can eat from the plant world. Check for toxins. So switch to eating organic. I think Nandini covered that really well. Switch to eating organic produce as much as possible. Also with your personal care products. So the soaps and the shampoos that are, your skin is the most absorptive surface on your body, the most. So anything you apply on your skin is going to get absorbed inside. So the soaps and the shampoos and the creams and the makeup products that you use, please check for toxicity levels in those. Switch to organic and natural products as much as possible. The utensils that you use. How many of you are using aluminium and non-stick? How many of you are using non-stick for cooking? Please ditch them right now. I am absolutely certain that if you continue to do that, it will cause mutation of your DNA. There are many toxins that get released from toxic non-stick cookware. Okay, so avoid using non-stick. Aluminium has been implicated in Alzheimer's. Aluminium can leach into acidic foods. So if you're making your sambars, rasams, and then if you're making dals that have lime or tomato in that, aluminium can leach into them. I would recommend using stainless steel utensils for cooking and glass for baking. Okay. Where else can you get toxins from? Your water. If you're storing it in mud pots, I know this is debated, but from what I understand about how mud containers are made, they're usually made from riverbeds or the mud that's around them. And then our rivers itself are so polluted, and there's so many effluents running into our water sources that can get deposited in the mud and the soil. So there's a chance, unless it's like certified from a source, there's a chance that your, the ones that you buy from your nurseries on the way and all, there's no guarantee of what's the quality of mud they're using for that. So there's a chance that all these heavy metals can leach into your food if you're using them for cooking. So stainless steel is a safe bet. Cast iron is good if you don't have an iron overload. So some of us, because our livers are so messed up, we have a lot of iron getting stored in our liver. And that's not getting utilized because we could have a B12 and a B6 deficiency. So if you have too much iron already in your liver and then you're using cast iron cookware, you could be getting an iron overload from your utensils. So it's best to stick to stainless steel. Where else can you get your toxins from? Air, of course. So air, like masks, are good. But there's this amazing book called How to Grow Your Own Air. There was a TED Talk also about it. And he speaks of ways in which you can clean up the air in your environment, the plants that you can plant, the things you can do to make sure that the air you breathe is clean. What are the sources of environmental toxins? Even the household cleaners that you use, right? Like if you're wiping your floor with bleaches and everything, there's a lot of chlorine in them. And you're walking barefoot in your house, the chlorine can get absorbed in your body, and chlorine is a halogen. Okay, so your thyroid uses iodine for making thyroid hormones, but your thyroid can't distinguish between iodine, bromine, and fluoride, and chloride. So if too much chlorine is going in, it's going to replace the iodine with that chloride, the chlorine from there, and then your thyroid will become dysfunctional. So for that reason, I recommend people don't use heavily chlorinated swimming pools as well. And then if your lawns and your gardens where you live are being sprayed with DDT and all these mosquito repellents and all of that, see if there's any way you can speak with the people who do that and bring the use of that down. So my entire focus is for your body. What you do for your body will heal the planet also. Your microbiome, if it is messed up, if you have a gut imbalance, if you have an imbalance of the microbes in your body, again, that's easier to know from blood tests what's really going on. But if you have that, then I would recommend getting a good quality probiotic in place and keeping your microbiome in shape. And learn to deflate stress. Stress is not going anywhere, it is there. It is there because that's nature's design. If giraffes weren't stressed about reaching out for leaves on top, they wouldn't have ever developed such long necks. Okay, so stress is there to evolve you. Learn to perceive it and respond to it in a better way. I know it's easy for me to say this, but harder for us to work with it because our lives only are designed that way. But what stress can create is, um, so, we have these two set of glands called the adrenals that sit above our kidneys. And the entire job is to make these different blends of hormones. Anyone knows which is the hormone that the adrenals make? Adrenaline. How many varieties of adrenaline are there? No, there are 56 different blends of adrenaline. And your body is so amazing, right? So when you're sitting and getting a massage, or when you're lying and getting a massage, how does your body feel? Very relaxed. Versus when you're stuck in traffic and you're late for the conference in the morning and cowspiracy, how does your body feel? You're stressed, right? Your heart is beating a little faster, your limbs are like wanting to do some action. Very different set of hormones, but the same adrenal that makes it. Okay? Now, the adrenals are an evolutionary tool that we have in our body. When our ancestors were out foraging and hunting and all of that. Sorry? Yes, the fight and flight response, right? That's the two ends of the spectrum. So one is you fight and you run away from there. The other one is to calm down. So if they were faced with a lion when they were out hunting, their body would have to make a quick decision, right? Whether to fight that lion or whether to run. But whatever decision was made, their heart would pump blood faster, it would send more blood to the limbs so that they could take some action. If they were lucky and if they survived that lion, they would go to their cave, sit with their cavemen bros, and then over that campfire in the night say, dude, don't go there, there's a lion, let's look for some other place for our sweet potatoes. So the adrenals serve an extremely important mechanism for our species survival. But for our ancestors, they had an advantage of being able to calm the adrenals down after a stressful event happened and learn from that. For us, we are running from stress to stress, right? We have stress about time, we have stress about relationships, we have stress for money, we have stress about the environment, we have stress about the news stories that we're reading. Like this morning, I read what happened to this woman in Hyderabad, and it did make my, yes, exactly, right? So there are stresses coming in from the environment continuously. We don't often put or carve out a period of time where we can find this cooling down period, okay? And that is what creates something called as adrenal dysfunction. That is also one of the biggest root causes of why everyone is sick. So learning how to deflate stress, you could meditate, you could do breath work. I do have some resources at the end of this presentation. I'll send you resources. But learning how to do that is really, really important. And breathing is underestimated in how much it can help your body heal. Because like I said, our body is made of food, the air we breathe, and the water we drink. And most of us don't know how to breathe. Take a deep breath. Put your hand and tell me what part expands when you deep breathe. How many of you had chest? You're supposed to breathe right into your tummy. That's what a deep breath is supposed to be like. Even I don't do it as consciously as I would like to more as often, but the more deep breaths you take, the more you slow down your breathing, the longer your life is going to live. I think a turtle breathes like, no, I don't know. I can't make up the statistic right now. How many? 6 times a minute, right? And a human? 19? Matter of factly, all t-shirts for you. Okay, one for you. So the slower you breathe, the longer you live, because what happens with air is there's oxygen in it. And that oxygen can be quite oxidative, it can cause oxidative damage. So the slower you breathe, the better you breathe. Also, it tends to calm you down, right, when you breathe slow. Like try being anxious when you're breathing slow. Try it, like be very anxious about something and breathe slow. It's impossible. So breathing is something that will help your body overall, not just for stress, but generally in longevity. So I spoke of the unlimited human potential, right? Like how we are limitless beings, and that is me. 3 years ago, yeah, I was like, I mean, look at even my expression, right? I didn't even want to live a life. Like I was like, just end it right now, enough. But I was 97 kgs. I had an autoimmune thyroid condition called Hashimoto's. I was diabetic. I had terrible skin and hair. And I really wasn't interested in living. Plus, I was like chronically constipated. I was financially broke. Like everything in my life was messed up until I decided to start working on myself. And this is me about a week ago. I am attempting a 100-kilometer walk 2 weeks from now. I have no idea how I'm going to do it, but uh, that is what I'm doing. Like, I really think there is no limit to what a human being can do once they start. You know, you get away from these basic problems of what's keeping you limited, and then you see the world that opens up, right? It's incredible. You can literally do anything you want to do. Next slide. Yeah, so before I forget your results, the next tab. So the first question I asked you was, what do you think about your own health, right? Let's see what the group says about how healthy you think you are. So 7% of you think you're excellent, 35% say very good. So generally what I get is you feel you're in really great health. Can we move on to the next question? And then more than 80% of the group here says that they're genetically predisposed to a health condition, right? So how do we know this? If anyone in your family, anyone in your blood relation has had one of these chronic diseases, then you are genetically predisposed to one of those diseases. So yay for your answer about being in excellent health, but if you don't take care, you are genetically predisposed to something happening. And then we see that 50% of the audience here actually has some form of insulin resistance probably developing in their body, because one of the signs of insulin resistance is this 4 p.m. slump, okay, where you probably had your coffee in the morning that's kept you going until afternoon, and then because your body is not able to utilize energy properly, by 4 you kind of have this fatigue thing that's happening to you. So that's 50% of the audience that said they thought they were in excellent health. Next, please. We're seeing a similar statistics in symptoms of insulin resistance. So this question correlates with the one that I asked about sweet cravings. So sweet cravings are not a bad thing. The brain is designed to tell you when you need energy. And something that's sweet is the quickest form of energy for your brain. But having sweet cravings that don't make any, like if you've just eaten a meal and then you're still feeling like eating something sweet, it's basically because your body is not able to break down glucose from the food you've eaten. And it's saying, okay, get me something sweet, I'm still hungry. Your cells are still starved for glucose, right? So that's still about 50% from the same audience that they thought they were in good health. And then I'm seeing a little better number here for adrenal dysfunction, but this is the one that was about whether you need tea, coffee, or a smoke in the morning. So humans are designed to wake up with the sun and go to bed as the sun goes down. And under ideal circumstances, you should have the highest energy levels as soon as you open up your eyes, as in like maybe 5 minutes from that. And then by evening, like along with the sunset, you're supposed to kind of taper that off and do more relaxing activities. But if you need tea, coffee, or a smoke in the morning, then that system is broken. You're needing energy from a stimulant than from your own body, which means that your adrenals are not making the right hormones for you to be up and peppy in the morning. So that's again about 50% of the same audience. This one corresponds to the question about sleep. So it's the same adrenal dysfunction. So if you're exhausted through the day, but if you're having dips and if you're not able to sleep in the night, then again your cortisol cycle is not working the way it should. Okay? Scroll down. Okay, this is good, which means not many people have a digestive dysfunction. This was to do about bloating and acidity and heartburn. Next. This is the one that I want to address, right? Because most people don't know we are deficient in nutrients that our body needs. So you might be eating the most organic, the healthiest of food. Just because the soil quality is not what it is like, we end up not having all the nutrition we need. And those will present as hair, skin, and nail problems to begin with, or they will present with frequent colds and coughs and low immunity. So we're seeing the same ratio here for deficiencies. Okay, this is very good. This is because this is this group. When I usually talk to a corporate crowd, the answer is very, very different here. But if most of you are already plant-based, then your need for prescription medicines would have already dropped. So it actually correlates with the audience that's sitting here. So good for you. All right, that's it. So just go back to the slide because I have some resource links there which you could use for like breath work and all of that. So if you want to learn how to breathe better, my friend Neeraj Naik has this breath work on Soma breath. So if you use SoundCloud as an app, just search for Soma breath and you'll get a 11-minute meditation that you just begin your day with that and end your day with that. You will see the difference it has made to your life. Again, on stress, there's this wonderful talk by this lady, Kelly McGonigal on TED. Just look for it. She says how to make stress your best friend, right? Like that would be a dream come true if you make stress your best friend. How to Grow Air is a good book for toxins from the environment, for toxins from your products that you use. Go to this Environmental Working Group's website. You can just ping Rutuja on her number. That's Rutuja. Wave your hand, Rutuja. And she'll send you all of these links and resources. Her number is 77966925504. 77966925504, and she'll send you all of these links and resources. If you want to get your blood test done, if you're in Pune, Dhande Path Labs is the people we work with. They really know which tests we look for and they'll get it done without missing out on a single parameter. But contact Rutuja, she'll help you out. And if we have time for questions, it's this thing called EMF, electromagnetic frequency. So it's coming from all our Wi-Fi routers and this 5G network that the government is like desperately trying to install. But I don't have enough data to conclusively prove, like with blood tests, right? I actually have data to show you deficiencies and pathogens, everything, whatever I spoke of. And I am a little data obsessed. So I don't like making, it's a gamble with your health otherwise, right? Like if I'm telling you this could be the root cause, it's like Baba Bengali kind of stuff, which I don't like doing. I'm sorry, not many of you would get the Baba Bengali reference. This was in Bombay local trains when I used to travel to college, and we would have these posters in the train, like, you know, everything from bad marriages to sexual dysfunction would be done by this guy, and it would be like, contact Baba Bengali. So that was the reference. So I don't like doing that. So I don't have enough data on electromagnetic frequencies and how they impact health, but a lot of people in the functional medicine world are now talking about it. So microwaves I wouldn't recommend at all. It kills food. Like there's no need to use a microwave in your life. I like my food hot, so I reheat it. But microwaves, there are enough resources on the web where you can see what microwaves do to food. Like they actually destroy, it's radiation, it's destroying your food particles. I have tried being away from grains. It's okay to do when I'm at home, but it's very hard to sustain that when I'm traveling so much. Like I travel a lot, so I keep grains at a minimum. Plus they're delicious. So there's no harm in eating grains, but if you make your diet grain-based, more grains and less vegetables and plants, and that's not my recommendation anyway. Like I would like to see more leaves and fruits and plant material than the seeds itself in your plate, right? So beetroots if you have high homocysteine levels, beetroots will not reduce it instantly. You will need this TMG as a supplement to bring it down. But for me, the beauty of it was that the thing that's killing you, the reversal for that is there in a plant-based root. There are many, so that if I get, yeah, we can talk about that. But for every illness, there is a plant.
I just wanted to add one more resource. So there's a NGO called Jeevit Nadi, and they have something called a toxic-friendly lifestyle workshop.
Okay.
Where they will tell you about what products you can use for avoiding the toxin.
Great.
Yeah.
So there's a store in Pune called Sustainable Lifestyle Solutions. Adrish is another one. They have really good products for household and personal care that are not toxic in nature at all.
This NGO actually makes those products, but what they actually recommend is you do these products, at home.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
all these are coming from our Indian traditions and cultures like Rita, Shikha and all.
Yeah.
This resource, I can give some pamphlets outside.
Thank you. But when I come on stage, I always come here to speak on behalf of humanity because we are not as idiotic as a species as we are currently acting out to be. We are very intelligent, and I speak on behalf of that species that I know I am part of. And I really thank the universe for giving me this opportunity to come and speak and just help you see that we are that and not what's happening right now. So be unlimited.